The following production is part of the Play Some Video Games podcast network.
Welcome back to the Nintendo Shack, a proud member of the Play Some Video Games podcast network. I am Jason Lacey, and joining me this week, Mr. Lucas Rose.
Hi.
Fancy meeting you here.
Right? Are we on the right show?
This is.
I thought we already did the podcast this week.
Is this Fluxtaposed? What's going on? I'm so confused.
It's the Fluxtaposed invasion.
That's right. So for those of you that PSVG listeners that may not be aware, I've never listened, Lucas is my BFF and co-host of the podcast we do together, Fluxtaposed, and he is bailing me out because Donnie is not here, and I needed someone to fill in to help me go through the land of Nintendo, and I was like, well, Lucas, come help me.
And I was like, okay, I don't know what I'll talk about, but okay.
And you nailed it. You're here. We're doing it.
I am here. We're doing it live.
I'm also, we are streaming this as we speak, and I am, I've never streamed a YouTube clip show myself. So when things break inevitably, this is why. So again, welcome.
It'll be your fault, and I can yell at you.
Yeah, you can yell at me, and yeah, exactly. So audio listeners, thank you for listening. As always, if you're here in the live show, welcome. It's the Nintendo Shack, and gosh, I haven't been on the show in a bit. Lucas, you've never been on the Nintendo Shack proper.
I've only been on one PSVG show ever, and it was when I first joined the ranks of the written word.
Gosh, we only had you on one episode, huh?
Well, that was back when it was already stuffed chock full of rotating folks on the podcast. So I was like, I don't have to be on the podcast. That's fine with me. I'll just contribute to the site.
Hey, you filled a purpose. You did a job. We were proud to have you. You're welcome back anytime. We'd love to have you. We'd love to have you back on the show anytime you want. You can come on back. We'll welcome you with open arms, sir. I don't. Last week was a slow news week for the Shack and everyone at Nintendo, and for me personally, I think it kind of feels that same way. But just to kind of give you guys a little update on what I've been into, I've been on a bit of a Nintendo hiatus, so to speak. I haven't. I don't know. Nothing's been like grabbing me that I've really wanted to play. And I've been struggling with that. So I did jump back into Lucas, this is the game I think you're aware of because you have it on Steam, Flint Hook. And I've talked
I don't have it, but I've seen it. I was interested in it when I first heard about it, and so I know of it at least. I have not played it myself.
Okay. Well, I feel bad about this, but this might be a game I walk away from. Like,
really?
Yeah, because it's hard. It's really difficult for me, and not to say like I don't think I'm like some uber gamer or anything like that, but I mean like this game is just unforgiving at times, and as you progress further and further, you have to clear more regular stages before you get to a boss. And now I'm at the point where I have to clear 5, and then if I make it to the boss, I'll die. But usually I don't even make it to the boss, and it's just a big time investment to like get so far, and then I just feel like I'm kind of cheaply killed by the stage, like the hazards and everything like that, and it's just like really, it's a bit of a letdown. And I looked up, I did like some Google searching, and I saw some other people had similar kind of complaints with the game because it just feels like some of the level design feels you feel cheapened a little bit with how you die, or how the game treats you. And that's a little disappointing, and I'm looking to hopefully that I break out of the slump and I pull through it. But other than that, I'm just kind of I don't know. I've been on a Switch hiatus, almost, so to speak. it is what it is. But
I get that way about everything, though, not just consoles or gaming in general, but pretty much all my hobbies, really. So, sometimes I'm like, oh, I gotta play this game until I beat it, regardless of if it's 60 hours. And then other times I'm like, no, I gotta watch all the movies right now and never touch a video game. So I think it's just natural to, have, especially on something like a console where with Steam, I have tons of things to choose from where it's almost too many options. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas with Switch, where you're buying an actual physical copy a lot of the time, or, waiting for a release that catches your eye, as opposed to buying games en masse, I could see you having some downtime with a console like that.
Yeah. Yep. And I don't know. It's all going to come full circle. There's a bunch of games coming out this spring and later on in the year, and that'll levy it'll destroy me, and I'll be playing a ton of things. And it's like, oh, I can't play games. It's like first world problems here. Stuff I'm complaining about, but I think part of it was such an awesome launch and how many like really quality games kept coming and coming. And let's face it, there are already a couple indie games I want to play. I haven't taken the jump on it. But the disappointing thing is, like, we're at that point now where there's like a bunch of there's quite a handful of games coming out each week. But then they're all either they're either mobile or Steam ports like crazy, and it's like,
ugh,
it's like the Wild West, a little bit. And it's like, I just don't really feel like taking a risk on something like that, And
is this just kind of like a dry spell before some of the larger releases, the next larger releases come out, or is it just like, oh, this is working, let's get everything we possibly can on the Switch?
I think that's from outside parties. There's that, because immediately you saw, oh, the Switch is selling, we gotta put our game out there.
Everyone waited until they saw if it was going to do well or not.
And now they're jumping on that bandwagon, and like you'll see this with everything. Now I don't know if a dry spell, so to speak. I mean, we do have. This is a weird year because like a lot of the up and coming releases we'll have on Switch are ports from the Wii U. We've got Hyrule Warriors coming out. We've got Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze is coming out, and a lot of stuff is still like we're waiting to hear announcements on. We know Smash is coming, but we don't know when. There's rumors of a new Pokemon game coming. There's rumors of a Fire Emblem game coming. So there's a lot of stuff people are waiting to see on. And I think a lot of people that have the Switch are also multi-console owners. So they are, they've got other stuff to play.
Jumping back and forth.
Yeah, Josh mentions in the chat, Shaq Fu is coming out in June. So there's that. If you bought, NBA Playgrounds, you got that for free.
Oh goodness gracious!
Because that was their gift for how bad NBA Playgrounds was as existence. But I don't want to drone on and on about this current topic because there's tons of other outlets that are doing the same thing, talking about the current events. And I thought, let's get this opportunity. Lucas, you being on here, you're not on here. You're not a current Nintendo console platform anything owner. So I kind of thought this was a good opportunity to kind of get your perspective because growing up, you didn't have a NES, correct? The Genesis was your first system?
I had the Genesis, yes. Yeah. Because it did what Nintendo don't, so,
Ooh.
I was an edgy 90s kid with a skater haircut.
That's right. Well, my question is, for you, is like, what has always been your outside perception? Like, not so much then because you were younger and you had I'm sure you had friends that had a Super Nintendo and things like that, so you probably played it at times, but like you owned a Wii, so like what got you to buy that? Like how did you jump in there? Like, take me back to there. Was it just because like the excitement and how popular that system was doing, Or
I think it's because we ended up playing it. That was back when we were still kind of trying to all hang out, like you, me, our respective girlfriends, and everything. So we were still partying a little bit and such. And so I think somebody had like WarioWare Smooth Moves or something like that, and we would play these party games or like Wii Bowling or tennis, and it was just a natural fit because you never really had to explain how to play Wii Tennis or bowling. It was just something that was like, oh, that looks fun, I want to try that. So that in combination with the Wii Fit, which I've talked about before, was kind of like the clincher for me of, you know, we can use this to entertain ourselves and our guests and have a little bit of fun with it, and we can also use it for balance board yoga exercises, I guess. it sounded less dumb then than it does now, but so that was kind of it. Was just like, it seemed like in a time where everybody was moving into like online play a lot.
Yeah.
This was really the only console that still allowed a lot of local multiplayer.
Yeah.
So that was like the big thing for me anyway, to make the jump.
Yeah, because it's not like you were like, let's look at some of my fondest adolescent gaming memories. Is like you, John, and Ray would have come over and we'd played the hell out of my GameCube. I mean, we played
that's true,
a ton of GameCube, and we played, you know, Double Dash, Melee, Mario Party. And I think those were like the only multiplayer games I had. You know, I had the Resident Evils and stuff we'd play, but I just remember like when I brought home Double Dash, I remember it was all just like we played through and like unlocked everything in one setting.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Nintendo has always done so well, when you mentioned like that local multiplayer aspect of it. But now so you had the Wii, and that was a weird time for me too, because I remember that came out and there was all the excitement, you know, about the 360 was out and other stuff, and I remember I was like the hipster guy. I was like, well, you know, graphical fidelity is only one thing. We're gonna hit the uncanny valley. We can't just push graphics. You know, our games have to innovate beyond that.
Yes.
And the Wii, this is what's gonna happen. This is offering a whole new way to play. You know, and that's what I was selling to myself. And then when it came to the point, you know, where they were unavailable everywhere, I was like, well, this isn't going to happen. I'm not going to camp out for one of these systems. And
never mind, actually.
Yeah, I have no desire to do that at all. And I just never got one. And then I got a 360, and, you know, then a brief stint going from PC gaming and this and that. But I'm curious, like, from leaving, well, I mean, you still have the Wii, but I mean, from leaving that point behind, like, what has been your perspective on Nintendo? As not to say that you're an outsider, but being away from the game, I'm curious of like what that brand is like to you, as from someone that's not actively in that ecosystem. That's not, you know, it's not like when you log on to your computer for the day or you're checking your phone. You're not like me, and you're not, oh, let's see what Nintendo is up to today.
Yeah, what's going on with Nintendo?
You're not actively like browsing for that. Like, it's like, I forget, like, here in PSVG we use the chain, like the term echo chamber a lot, and because we're all like enthusiasts and we all like the same things and we all beat the same drum and bounce the same things off another, and like, this is great, but I forget, like, until I talked to like my brother Will, for example. I would consider Will a gamer. He likes games. He plays games. He has a Switch. He's got a PlayStation. You know, he's had multiple consoles. He's always big on the games, and he has a good idea what's going on. But I remember one day I was like, "Hey, are you going to watch the Nintendo Direct?" I don't think he had never heard of what a Nintendo Direct was before. And for any of us that are like big time Nintendo fans or internet users, like, that's one of the events we live for, you know, to see all these upcoming announcements and new games. Had no idea what that was. And for me, I was just like, that was such a foreign concept, because I just assume. What? And then I think that at that point, that's what gave me perspective. Okay, I'm like, I am not, as much as like, I don't think of myself as hardcore, but I mean, in terms of your average consumer, you know,
You're informed.
I'm much more involved in that. And so like
Yeah.
having my brother talk like that gave me a little perspective. I was like, oh, wow, okay. This is I am not this is not normal what I'm doing, you know. So I kind of wanted to see, like, now that I, you know, prepped you for what I want you to say, then I proceeded to talk over top of it and completely
Ask me a
derailed you
question
on what
and
you
then
thought
talk for
about.
20
Yes,
minutes.
yes. So back to my original point, please.
Yes. So what's it like, kind of on the outskirts?
Yeah, and I was kind of
On
thinking,
the
like, what's
outside
your
looking
outside
in?
perception on that? Like, you've seen, I mean, you're obviously aware of, like, the meteoric rise of the Wii and then the shambles that the Wii U was, and then
Right.
now where we're
And
at
then
now.
the Switch and how that was going to do. Because I remember when everyone was just like, what is this? Because we obviously checked it out for our podcast, because it was like, you're going to talk about whatever Nintendo is coming out with.
Mm-hmm.
So I know of like that aspect of things, but like you said, I've never watched a Nintendo Direct or anything like that. So for me, like, I can kind of understand the perspective of other game developers where they're doing like a wait and see approach, because they really kind of embody the idea that they need to innovate and they need to use the technology that they come up with, whether it's for good or bad. You know, like I know one of the biggest problems with Star Fox Zero was that the motion controls were kind of jammed into that game, and it was like you're gonna use them regardless of whether or not it helps or hinders. So, you know, when they go with something, they go all in with that idea. So at least they back up their product and don't just drop it immediately, whether or not that's good or bad. So for me, like, I wouldn't have been a first day adopter of the Switch anyway. I'm rarely a first day. VR was like the only thing I can think of,
Yeah.
and we see how that turned out. So,
You've got a really fancy paperweight on your desk.
That's right. I can wear it on
Dude,
my
you
face
could
if I want
sell
to.
that, and you could have like a 1.5 Switch.
Nobody would buy it. They know better. I could have like half of one Switch probably. So for me, it's always been kind of a wait and see type deal, which is how it was with the Wii, because I didn't even really want it until I played it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, motion controls didn't really mean anything until I played the bowling game or whatever.
Yeah.
So same thing with the Switch. Like, I played your Switch, and ever since then, because it was on that trip to almost Detroit, basically, right?
Yeah, I went to Dearborn, so the west outskirts of Detroit.
Yeah, so when I played it, I mean, I was kind of like, I could actually see myself getting one of these. You know what I mean? Which with the PS4 or that's the weird thing about Nintendo. With the PS4 or the Xbox One, I don't need to play it to know what it is. Like, there's nothing there that's like, oh, I wonder how that works. But with Nintendo releases, you know, most recently the Wii with their motion controls, the Wii U with the what is it, the Master Controller or whatever with the giant screen on it.
Oh, the gamepad. Yeah.
Gamepad, and then
I
like my name better.
I do like your name better. That was still like, I remember when we were at Russ's, and I remember I was asking him like, so like, what's up with that controller thing? And he let me hold it. And I was just like, this is weird, because it just, you know,
it should have just been a tablet, basically.
Well, I think let's face it. I think that's what they would have liked to do, but I don't think technology was quite where it needed to be, where it made it a price point that would be viable to the average consumer. You know.
True. But like, to jam a controller on a giant screen, I mean, it worked for some applications, but not for many, it seemed like. And then to go from, you know, to the Switch, like, all of those things are different experiences that I think it would be important to try for yourself before, you know, you buy it, obviously. And that's interesting to me, because they are innovative and they are like pushing the envelope. It's not just, here's your console and 2 controllers, and our controllers haven't really changed for like 15 years, basically. So that's what I think keeps Nintendo interesting, but it also makes it difficult to be, like you said, lining up on the release day without, is it going to be another Smash or is it going to be the Wii U where it's confusing and weird and I don't like it?
Yeah.
Get me out of here.
Yeah.
So as far as but being on the outside, I will say many of the games for, PlayStation or Microsoft, I find I can live without. I'm just kind of like, well, that would be cool to play, but there's probably some equivalent or something else that's in that genre that I can get on the PC and not really be too upset about. But Nintendo has kind of had a way where they have kept the platformer alive, I would say, and they do a really good job of that, the traditional platformer anyways. And a lot of that, like that style of game in particular, I find pretty difficult to find a quality game that you would find on the PC or other consoles, really. I mean, it's their first party titles that really make me go, man, that would be nice to own a Switch to be able to play. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like Mario Kart, obviously Mario Galaxy or Odyssey, and stuff like that. It's like those are the games that, to me, that's what I'm missing when I think about what my PC gaming isn't fulfilling in my my gaming life, I guess.
Yeah, because you just don't have anything quite comparable to that. Yeah, I get that. And I think I remember, like, I'm not as big a Reddit user as I used to be, but I remember like talking when I'd be like the Nintendo subreddit and things like that. They'd always say like, how the PC is like the perfect companion piece. If you had a Wii U or a Nintendo console, it's always the great complementary piece because the games are so different. And I agree, like a lot of the games that you can play on a PC aren't going to be, there are exclusives on mainly PlayStation, but Xbox does have a few exclusives as well. Not to throw shade. Sorry, I'm not trying to throw shade here, but
we're all friends here.
And you're not gonna be able to play those exact games, but you're gonna be able to play something similar in the genre on PC. And let's face it, until the Switch, Nintendo wasn't really getting third-party support. So any of those big third-party releases you can get on PC. You're gonna get your Assassin's Creed. You're gonna get your Arkham games. You're gonna get your Far Cries, things like that. You get that on PC, while on Switch you don't get it.
Yeah. Well, and even the indie titles that do overlap, a lot of them I would rather play on the Switch, honestly, because I find that with PC gaming, it tends to be a little bit more intensive just because the way you're sitting, you're not really relaxing on a couch and just chilling with the Switch.
That's always been Nathan's like point. He's always brought up about why he doesn't like to game on his PC much, because he wants to hang out, kick back in his chair, and just chill out that way.
Yeah, and I mean I've gone to through great strides to make it so that I can play my computer at the TV, but that's only with games that support, one of these controllers, the Xbox controller, and not very many games even. I mean, there are a few that do controller support well, especially the ones that are cross-platform, but most of them don't feel as good, I guess. And again, I'm still sitting in this stiff computer chair playing on the TV behind me. So it's, it's still not me cuddling up on the couch or sitting in bed or whatever. It's still, it's a little bit better, but it's not great. So
let's face it, you can't live the dream. You can't play PC games on the toilet.
That's true. Exactly. Exactly.
Hashtag poop life. I mean,
so though, I mean, it's not only the games that are desirable and the indie games that would just do better for me on the Switch, but it's also the ease of use and I don't know, the simplicity of it. It's nice to just be able, I'm talking just in general. It's nice to just be able to turn on a console You know what I mean? And not have to be like, oh, I have to install drivers. Of course, nowadays you buy a new game and it's like, oh, I got to download a first day patch that's going to take an hour. Cool. I guess I'm not playing this now. But in general,
Yeah.
you know, generally speaking, it is much more convenient, and I feel like indie games kind of go with that convenience. I think of like Stardew Valley. I tried to play that on PC. It just doesn't feel right. I'm sure some people can do it, and I mean, there's nothing technically wrong with it. It just doesn't feel right to play that game sitting at my computer desk for some reason. So
yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because I feel the same way with indie games, and I don't know. It's not like if I want the best experience, yeah, I'm gonna bring my Switch down here. I'm gonna dock it at my desk here and play it on this monitor right here in front of me. But most of the time, I'm gonna play for a little bit in bed. I'll play it handheld, or if I just want to hang out upstairs in the same room my wife's in, I'll do that too. And it's just I had no idea that the handheld option would give me so much more ability to do that. And you mentioned that about the Xbox controller and the controller support. It does sometimes feel a bit janky on PC because yes, they have to they have to deal with how many different configurations, and maybe mouse and keyboard's the preferred way. Maybe the controller doesn't work, and at least it's been tested for a specific console. It should function. It should work. Here, speaking of that, because we've talked about this in PSVG. And people always ask me if it came to it, would I play it? Would you play Awesome Knots if it came onto, let's say theoretically, you owned a Switch. Would you play Awesome Knots on the Switch?
On the Switch?
Yeah.
And if it only, yes, I would, if it didn't have crossplay. Because anybody who has a mouse and keyboard would nail all of us.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's a perfect example. Because the thing
I think that's a game. Not to just say toot that horn because I like that game, obviously, but people talked about it. And at first, I was like, no, I wouldn't play it because I feel like it's better on the mouse and keyboard. But I really think it could there's a huge audience on the Switch, especially if they brought it in like cheap enough and then tried to sell you brought it in at like
the packs.
I know it's free to play on PC, but if you tried to bring it in at like under $15, I think if you brought it in. I don't think they could do it free to play because you got
$7.99.
Yeah, because you have to make back the cost of their development to port it.
Yeah.
So I think if you somehow brought it like at $10 and then you sold the skin packs or the announcer packs, whatever they want to do, I think that'd be great because I think the Switch is a prime. Switch doesn't have any games yet in that genre. There is one in the works coming. It's actually a mobile phone version of a game that's. Well, the game runs on mobile. It's huge in China. It's like one of their most popular MOBAs. So I think that could do really well on the Switch platform, and I think it fits. I want more people to discover that game, and I don't think you can play it on other consoles really anymore. I think the scene's just dead. And let's face it, the PC scene isn't exactly thriving.
No,
and
it's a toxic. I mean, anybody who's still playing it is horrible, anyways.
Yeah.
So.
I'm just curious, if that would something that could work. But I'm also wondering, what's the developers' roadmap with this game because they've been supporting just that game for quite a while, updating it and changing it, and eventually they got to be like, okay, we got to do something else because they do have other games on Nintendo consoles. They had on the Wii U they had Swords and Soldiers. I'm pretty sure Ronimo makes that, and I think there's a sequel, and those were on the Wii U. I don't think they were on 3DS. But so they have that relationship already. I'm just saying it's possible, but I mean just one of the things you think about playing at a different perspective. Because let's face it, when we first started playing Awesome Knots, we started with the controller because you're used to it. You're like, oh, platformer, so I'm going to play it. But
it's not bad. It's just the aiming. Yeah. That becomes a problem.
It's hard to be precise unless everyone else is using it. If everyone else is using it, then you're in even playing field. But if you
exactly
you mix keyboard and mouse users in there.
And I think the Switch, as far as like indie games go, it makes me feel like the importance of the graphics and stuff. If I play it on the Switch, I don't feel like I'm losing anything if I'm playing Stardew Valley or Awesome Knots. Like there's no graphical fidelity that I'm losing by playing on the Switch. That kind of idea with the Wii, especially because that's the last one I can relate to, that didn't even have an HDMI output. Like that thing looks
That's
like garbo.
just component, right?
Yeah, component. That was the best way to get the output was component. Of course, I never did. I always used just regular RGB, which same thing, but you're not getting.
I didn't have HDMI on my 360s.
Yeah, that's true for a while.
Because I got the somehow I still got the OG model that didn't have that.
Wow. Goodness, you mean you didn't have to trade it in 8 times after?
Yeah, I did. I had 4 different 360s, but they managed to
this guy's not getting a new one.
No.
F him. So I think that, like, because personally I have a tendency to, okay, I'll start up a PC game like Far Cry. That's a good example. And I'll be like, all right, let's go into the graphic settings and let's try to pump out every single, like, I need to check every setting, try to get 60 frames per second at least. Oh, this setting kind of pushed me under 40, so now I got to go back and change it. 30 minutes go by and I haven't even played the game yet. I'm too busy, like, benchmarking and trying to figure out what the best, you know what I mean? That doesn't happen. You just turn on the Switch and you start playing. Like, I haven't had that experience in quite some time, having not played a console game in a while.
Yeah, I will say that right now, but like I never got too big into benchmarking stuff. It's basically like, okay, is this running on my computer? Okay, good, and then I can go do whatever and play it. But having to just not worry about that and just being able to just play something, like, I know that's always the point people bring up when they're like, PC gaming, you have to deal with drivers and do all this nonsense. But then when it actually just works, yeah, you're just like,
well, okay,
it is nice. It is nice to have that.
But I will just say this, not to sound like a PC, love story here or anything. I am an enthusiast, but I will say that I can relate it to sort of like owning a sports car or something of that nature, where it's like you put up with that kind of stuff because you enjoy the hobby, but you can also have a daily driver too. Like, I understand why people are just like, oh, I would never want to own, a sports car or something like that, because I would have to put so much money into it, and I'd have to park 800 spaces away so that nobody ran into my car. Where with the daily driver, you're just like, whatever, I don't even care. It's just the thing that gets me from point A to point B. Computer's kind of same way. In a weird, sick fashion, I enjoy like pumping every possible ounce of power to get the best graphical fidelity to gameplay performance ratio.
Yeah.
But sometimes I don't want to do that. And that's why I think that, like you said, the PC Nintendo combination is kind of like the best complementary duo that you could possibly have. So
what now, I also hear like another viewpoint I get a lot of people is like, Nintendo is viewed as a more adolescent targeted company. A lot of their properties are very cutesy, child oriented. And like, is that a turn off, or like, is that something that's ever bothered you? I mean, do you?
I think if that's a turn off to anybody, then they're an idiot. Honestly, because I think Nintendo is proof that, because I feel like this comes up a lot in kids movies and stuff like that, where a lot of people who aren't children love Toy Story, for instance, just as an example.
Yeah.
I think of Nintendo the same way. You can make a video game that is not geared towards adults specifically and just make it for everyone. It doesn't have to be blood, guts, and machine guns, and still have it be a good game. I think they prove that all the time. Like, Mario Kart is fun because it's a solid game that just happens to look like Mario. And that now I think that helps them in the same way that Disney is helped out by the fact that they're Disney. It's like, oh, Disney made it? Well, I'm probably going to go see it because I know it's going to be at least decent. Nintendo kind of has a similar reputation with video games where it's like, oh, it's, it's kind of for kids, but it's also good enough that I don't care that I'm playing, a game about a plumber who saves a princess. Like, it doesn't bother me at all. And me personally, I've never really understood the whole like Nintendo is for kids. Like, I get that that's the perception there, but I don't understand why it's a problem, I guess, is what I'm saying.
I mean, and you've obviously consumed your share of violent and adult content throughout your
Yes.
gaming history. I mean,
Yeah, sure. I mean, like, Sega went in the complete opposite direction, and Nintendo's the one that's still standing. Look what Sega does now. They don't even make hardware anymore. So I don't think that you can say that that's an argument unless it goes both ways.
so you don't.
You know what
You're
I
saying
mean?
you don't need to have Zack Snyder make your games. They don't need to be dark and gritty and adult for you. To
You don't have to put a
enjoy.
chainsaw on every single possible weapon for it to be successful. I think that you can just as easily have a Nintendo style where their philosophy is let's make fun games for everyone. And if that bothers you, that's fine. I mean, if you really want your games dark and gritty and you want to just blast people, I can understand that, but I want both. I have no problems with, awful games that are I mean, as long as they're good. This is all with the caveat that they're good games and fun to play and not just like games that exist to be shocking or something like that. But you can just as easily have that as on the other side. And honestly, as a father now, that makes me feel a lot more confident that I could just play a Nintendo game and not have to worry, is my son looking up and watching me, murder zombies with an axe or something.
I forget that. I forget that thing about how your son is so much. Sorry to take over here. I forget how much older your son is than mine, because I'm so much caught up in the world of a 1-year-old, and I forget like Isaac's going to be 3 this fall, and you're much closer to the age where you can start introducing more of that media to him, and eventually enjoying that with him together. And like you said, I'm sure you'd have a lot more options with that than.
Well, and it comes back to being able to use it upstairs, where I mean, like, my computer is downstairs in a corner. It's my cave where I sit in the dark and play games about slaughtering humans. No, but seriously though, it's like computers kind of are an ugly mess that most people throw into the corner somewhere, whereas consoles are, you can neatly hide them. They're not giant, bulking, loud machines. They typically fit in with the rest of your media equipment, and nobody questions that. So it, again, like, to know that if I had one, it would be upstairs and I can play good games that I don't have to worry if he wants to, like, oh, are you interested in what's going on? Here, go ahead and walk Mario off the edge of the cliff 500 times. If it really, if it gets you interested in it, whatever. That's fine.
You had him. He was playing Wind Waker that one day.
Yes, exactly. That's a good point. He was playing Wind Waker, and all he did was he kept jumping Link into the ocean because he thought it was hilarious to have him swim around. Problem is when you're in the ocean for long enough, he drowns, but he didn't understand that that's what was happening.
What was that? Was that on the Wii? Did you...
Yeah, I think it was technically it was an emulator.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if you were playing, because do you still have my disc version of Wind Waker?
I think I gave it back to you because I jokingly said I'm probably never going to play it.
I think you did. I think I might still have it there. I wasn't sure if you were playing that or if you were playing like a dolphin version of it.
Well, because that was the version that I told you about that it plays Wii games in VR. So that's why I had originally downloaded it. So I was playing that in VR, and that was kind of interesting. It didn't work.
Not that I condone these sort of things, but your best bet if you want to play that would be to try to find a Wii U version of the HD port.
remaster.
Yeah, because that would be much more playable than the horrible.
Oh, I watched you play it, and I was like, I don't. That's why I stopped playing, because I had your old version.
You're like, whoa.
I was like, I can't go back to this.
Great game.
So.
Great game, that one. What do you have any games on like your virtual console on Wii that you could eventually introduce Isaac to? I know you have Blades of Steel, but I mean, do you have any of the classic Marios or anything like that on there?
I think I have Super Mario 3.
I mean, not that it matters, because again, you have a PC and there's probably stuff out there that allows you to play classic games in some way, shape, or form. I've heard people talk about it. You know, I've never checked it out myself. I just heard about it.
Well, I think you saw that picture of him playing Mega Man, which is
way above him. Yeah.
I don't need him throwing the controller and breaking it. But I mean, that's kind of the plan, honestly. If I was to introduce him to gaming, other than, I mean, mobile gaming is so accessible now that it's no big deal to get a tablet or something and have, some puzzle games on there for directed towards kids. But when it comes to actual like gaming that I would describe as like what I do, I would imagine it would be some sort of Nintendo project first, or product that he would experience, because again, like, the selection is just more open towards children. Like, you don't get the crappy movie video game knockoffs and the cash-ins that are edutainment that suck or whatever. You have actual games that the worst is like cartoon violence. So
he's just gonna play Minecraft anyway.
I know, right? Well, at least I feel like if that happens, I'm the type of parent who can kind of understand that to a certain degree.
I think that's one of the better routes you can go, because there's a creative outlet there, and this way he's building and designing, and
I'd rather let my kid play Minecraft than watch YouTube videos of other YouTubers playing Minecraft.
As long as it's not he's gonna fall in love with. It'd be funny if all of a sudden he's like, "Daddy, I found this channel I really like. It's called Game Grumps."
God, that's something I can't watch with them around, because they swear casually, and it's like every time there's an F-bomb or something, you're just like, ooh, did he hear that? Did he look up from what he's doing?
Daddy.
Gosh,
just drops it. Like how he likes to, like fun and bubbles. It's just going to be another F word.
yeah, no kidding. I said oh gosh one time, and he repeated that. So I'm just like, yep. I gotta be careful.
Can't do it.
Forever onward.
What? It's funny because I ask you this stuff, but you're very much you're still involved. You still have a pretty good idea what's going on, because you're stuck with me, and I talk about Nintendo a lot. And then most of, let's face it, probably all of the community that we have in Fluxtaposed just about are all console gamers. We really don't have anybody that's PC only, and a good chunk of them are in Nintendo or multi-platform. So you're kind of on the outside looking in a little bit, because you've got all of that going on. So it just by osmosis, you do have a level of being informed. So with that said, you're gonna buy a Switch and get Smash Brothers so we can do doubles together, right? And you go to the local tourneys and do doubles.
Well, I've always been a one console person, because I don't care that other people own more than one console. I just have never. I couldn't foresee myself ever owning more than one.
That's what I thought too. And here I have an Xbox One in front of me, and it's just like,
right.
We'll talk on that. You finish your point here.
So I think I've made the decision that if it ever came to the time where we had the extra income to buy one, it probably, because for the longest time I thought I'd get a PlayStation, because I'd been an Xbox person for so long, and like you said, all the exclusives,
all the games you've never played before, and
they're all coming to PlayStation. But in practicality, with like what the Switch can do physically, being able to take it places with you, or and almost treat it like a mobile, like a 3DS or something like that.
Yeah.
It's like those applications make it so much more than just a console. And that kind of made me go, you know what? If I bought this, I think I'd be happier because it would just be easier to play. It would situationally, like you've talked about playing the Switch while your wife watches TV or something. That type of thing I could see happening for me as well. Where with a console, it'd be no different. It would be hooked up down here, and
because you're doing that now, except you're in the basement and she's upstairs, so you're separated.
Exactly. So like I said, I've kind of made that decision where if I do ever have the chance to buy one, that's the route I would take for sure.
I applaud people that always have all the consoles because I don't know how you do it. Like I just have the two, and already I feel like I don't know why I have this Xbox a lot of the time because up until recently I wasn't playing. Now all of a sudden I'm playing Sea of Thieves. I haven't checked out a lot on Game Pass yet, but I do have an active subscription because I was like I get hyper focused on one thing or the other, and typically I was more focused on games I was playing on the Switch, but I just don't know how. Oh wait, I know how. You don't have a
kids.
Yes, you don't have a consumer, and not to downplay because I'm sure there are people who are to do it, but I just don't know how. I can't juggle it all. There's only so many hours in the day, and most of my job, is my son, my wife, my job, and I somehow scrunch gaming into this very small corner of my existence that doesn't see the light of day as much as I would really like to, and that's just I think called growing up a little bit, but.
Well, yeah, I mean, I had to get used to and I've talked about, as Isaac got older, I had to get used to the idea that I can't sit down and play games for 5-6 hours in a day, however that adds up, 2 hours here, 2 hours there. Now it's like relegated to about 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. to about 11 p.m., 11:30, depending on how bad I want to stay up.
How tired you want to be the next day. Yeah.
And even in that little of time, I don't have enough self discipline all the time to even sometimes I get down here and you know what? I just feel like watching Netflix. So it's like sometimes there's days where I just don't even feel like playing games because it's just too much to do. Yeah. And so like you said, for those people who have multiple consoles, bust through all the new releases, within a week or two, I'm just like, more power to you because
I will live vicariously through your achievements.
Yes, exactly. So, and like I said, I have more than enough to have to figure out what I'm going to play on the PC anyways. So I could probably stop buying games for quite some time and still go, oh yeah, I should probably finish that, these 8 games that I started and never came back to. So
I think for me, the probably the coolest selling point on the Switch is the suspend feature. The fact that one button, you put the system to sleep and then you pick it back up and just turn it on and you're right back there in the game. It just makes so many things more accessible. And I know I talk about accessibility and all that, but I was curious, because that leads to I don't know where this is coming from, but I've had this really crazy desire. I want to play an RPG really bad. I don't know why.
Oh yeah, I understand that.
And I oddly enough, I really want to play a JRPG. The grindy, because that's what I grew up with. I've never really, I haven't played any Western RPGs like you have. I never really gotten to Mass Effect, never really gotten to Dragon Age, things of that nature. So I don't have that desire so much. So I don't really need.
And there definitely is differences anyway.
Yeah.
So.
But so that's I'm really looking forward to my next probably the next game I get. I'm gonna have to just bite the bullet and take a risk on one because I'm not too sold on any one or the other. But I kind of was wondering what's that? If you're able to what is that? What's that one game? Is there a game out on Switch right now that you really would want to play? Is there something that you'd really want to see on the system?
I want to play Breath of the Wild. After playing it with that's what I played when we were going up, and I was like, I don't want to play this right
Yeah,
now and
'cause
like
you're-
ruin the experience
yeah,
for me.
'cause
But
you
I
wanna-
got a taste, and I'm just like, this is cool. Like, I could definitely sink hours into that game.
I got the Kool-Aid in me. I need more.
Yeah, exactly. But Odyssey is exactly the same way too. Like, I followed that game a little bit, just like announcement trailers and watching videos for it and stuff. And I could easily play that because I've always liked Mario 64.
We had a lot of fun playing 3D World. A couple times we hung out at my place and played games. So, that reminds me, that was another awesome memory, that like a game I'd love to see on the Switch would be a port of NES Remix NES Remix, because I think that was
that was a lot of fun
because we just traded the controller back and forth and we're doing it. And I think the gosh, forgive me listeners, because I know there's NES Remix and I don't remember what the second version was, because I think that actually had a multiplayer component to it. But I would love to see either an NES Remix collection come out, or even give us like a SNES remix, something like that. I think that'd be a ton of fun. And again, I know people are like, oh, not another port on the Switch, but I think I don't know. I don't like. A lot of people will talk about multiplayer, and Donnie has all these opportunities to play a lot of these games with his kids. So usually when I hear an idea when a game's like local multiplayer only, I'm just like, no, it's a huge turnoff to me, because it's not something I got to experience. But I do think about instances when I've actually had it, and so it's been a blast. And I think another thing I think we'll probably see more of on the Switch as we go. I think we could see a lot more like board games getting brought to the Switch, because of the portability of the console and being able to play it tabletop in a way.
Mm-hmm.
I think we could see I'm surprised there's not like Catan on the Switch, or
that's true,
like Ticket to Ride or stuff like that.
Yeah, those very
the gateway
designer light games.
Yeah, the gateway designer games,
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I could definitely see that. Or I've talked about Sentinels of the Multiverse before, and the problem with that game is the setup. Like, it's a card game where you play as superheroes, and everybody has a deck of cards, and each player plays in differently, and so like the way that the actual cards work, you end up having them all spread out in front of you, and it's just like, this would be a lot easier if I could just do this in the context of a virtual world as opposed to actually having to physically do it, because it requires a lot of space. So yeah, I definitely could see stuff like that as well. I can't think of anything necessarily that I would want to see on there. I do think though that I would be in the same boat as you, and I probably would end up playing more like JRPGs and stuff like that, because especially you were talking about the suspend mode. I really enjoyed that on the PSP. I own that, and I didn't really. I wanted it to turn it into a emulator player, but that only kind of came to fruition. It's almost more trouble than it's worth. But
I thought that's what my 3DS would be.
Nice.
I thought I would do that with my 3DS to make that an RPG machine too, because you just close the clamshell and then pick it right back up, and same thing. But I just never went down that road enough. I think it's because I knew the Switch was coming, and it's like I trash the 3DS a lot, but I do think that's a really cool piece of hardware, and I do like it. I think I just always knew that once the Switch came out, it's just kind of hard to go back to that. It's like a much. It's not a less. Oh, I mean, yeah, it is a lesser experience, but it's just not. It is what it is. But
I guess one thing I do want to say, or like when I'm thinking about it here, because we've done a lot of praise, I guess, and I haven't really talked about anything negative.
Yeah, please do, because I feel like I do worry that we're all very much here at the Nintendo Shack. We're all very much Nintendo, and I don't think we throw out enough criticism and as is warranted. I feel like I very much get as into a Nintendo homer a lot. So please bring it.
I think that as far as the releases of things like Skyrim and Assassin's Creed or Far Cry or Doom, for instance. None of that stuff, I think, has any right to be on the Switch, honestly. Like, I'm okay with it being there. It does kind of feel weird. Like, it almost feels like a joke, kind of.
Is it because of because it has to be like dumbed down, being scaled down to run on the hardware, or
Partially, yeah, because I am coming from a like, why would I play it there when I can just play it on the PC? But of course, not everyone has that option. But I just, when I think of the way that I want to utilize the Switch, it really does. Those wouldn't have any interest for me whatsoever. So when I do hear like, oh, like Skyrim's being remade for the 100th time, I'm just like, that I have no reason for that. And I mean, you can just say, well, then just don't buy it, which is true. Like, it's not like something that Nintendo's doing wrong. I just feel like that's kind of a trend that I don't need to follow at all. Well, those releases feel weird on the Switch, I feel like.
It'd be one thing too if they were day and date, and they're not, like
that's true. Maybe that's what it is.
Like Wolfenstein, we just now at PAX East got to see like 15 minutes of gameplay of Wolfenstein 2 running on the Switch. So I mean, that's a game that's been out for how long everywhere else, and like the same dilemma. I want to play that game, but I know I would want to play on the Switch because of the accessibility. But again, it's hard to justify paying full price on the Switch for a game when I can get it on Steam for $20.
And maybe that's what it is too, is like the pricing just seems weird. But
there's a Switch tax, unfortunately, with stuff because I mean, and we've seen things that when it has come out at the same time as stuff, it's been more expensive on the Switch, and because people allude that to the cartridges, the cartridge-based format of their media, and the production costs. And
it's a weird position to think like, I want to get a console that isn't going to be my main gaming machine. That's kind of what it is right? Yeah. Like at the end of the day, I'm still going to play PC games. Whereas when I got the 360, it kind of just depended. Yeah. I was either heavily into the 360 or heavily into PC, and it was always like one kind of suffered because I was doing the other one. Whereas here, everything that I can't get from my PC, I would be doing on the Switch, and they would just kind of equally balance out, I feel like. And I guess that's why I come from like, why would I ever play those mainstream, well, not mainstream, but I don't want to say like, oh, I don't like it because it's mainstream, but those third-party major releases, I guess is what I mean, where I could get it anywhere else and it'll perform better.
Yeah.
Like, it almost seems like a waste of time, but again, if that's your only avenue to play the game, then I don't blame you.
Yeah, where I mean, you're special. You and I are a special case. Well, not special, but I mean, not everyone has. Some people, some people are Nintendo fans first and foremost, and that could be their only platform. And there's a lot of people that I know that only have a Switch, so that's going to be the only way they play certain games. And it's cool to have that option. But I agree, if you have it available in other areas, other avenues, it's why are you? In a way, you're going to probably be playing a lesser experience of the version.
And if you are into those games, you probably already have another way of playing it anyways. So I guess that's why it seems so weird to me that it would even exist there. But that would be my one criticism, I guess. Right. It's not even really a negative. It's
it's good. It's good. I like it because that kind of brings, we're running about on time, so that kind of brings the conversation full circle. Lucas, for people, this could be their introduction to Lucas Rose and the greater. Now we got to make this meme, and then people say, Infinity War was the greatest crossover event ever. No, Nintendo Shack 24 has been the greatest crossover event ever.
That's true. Here I am.
For people that are, this is their first encounter of Lucas Rose. How can they find you on the internet? What things are you up to out there? What are you, You know,
Well, you have to go to this website that leads you to the dark web, first of all.
Oh, boy.
And then you have to send in a blood sample to this mailing address. And then, and only then, can you find me at on Twitter at heavymetal_riff. I'm on there. Pretty much that's really it. I mean, obviously we do our podcast, but if you want to contact me outside of the context
wait. You do a podcast? What's that about?
Yeah.
Tell me more.
Yeah.
What's this tell me about this podcast you do.
Yeah, it's a podcast where I do all the work and then some Yahoo just kind of hosts it or pretends to anyway. Yeah, we do a podcast called Fluxtaposed. I mean, if you like my idiocy, then you should probably check that out because you and I are idiots.
I'm almost a normal person on this podcast.
Yes, here you are acting like, you have a job to do and you don't want to let everybody down, so you're being cool as a cucumber.
Right.
But we let it fly. We get goofy over at Fluxtaposed.
That's right.
So check that out for sure.
And very vulgar. So young ears,
That's
you
true.
probably don't want to listen around. So
I have been very careful not to.
You've done good. I didn't get a chance to remind you, so I was hoping. So. Well,
but yeah, check me out on Twitter. I'm not doing anything, but that's kind of the place I check more so.
Yeah.
When it comes to listeners and people who just want to get in chat.
Cash me outside. How about that?
Exactly.
Well,
Wow.
Lucas, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your Thursday evening to talk something you barely know anything about, which is how we do our normal podcast. We both talk about things we don't know anything about.
That's true. I just talk out of my ass. This isn't even a real mile. Oh, there.
Yep,
I
there
screwed it up. Now you got to rate an M for mature.
One swear. We'll let that fly. But again, yes, thank you for joining me on the Nintendo Shack tonight.
Sure.
Please check out the other great podcasts we have on the Play Some Video Games Podcast Network. And, if nothing else, please remember, as I botched the outro, never stop gaming and come back and check out Nintendo Shack next week. Donnie will be back to save you from all this idiocy. Lucas, it's been a pleasure, sir.
Tell everyone at PSVG which show you want me to appear on next, even if I don't have anything, even if I don't know what I'm talking about.
This has been a production of the Play Some Video Games Podcast Network. Find more great content at playsomevideogames.com.